Welcome back, everyone, to our chess opening series. And today we are looking at the King's Gambit, especially how to play it positionally. What do I mean by that? For the last 300, 400 years, we've been playing e4, e5, f4, and this King's Gambit has been popularized and played by all sorts of attackers like Paul Morphy. Now, back then, after the 19th century, people always played it for mate. They thought, black is going to take my pawn. I'm going to sacrifice my knight somewhere. I'm going to play something like knight g5, sacrifice my knight on f7, and then try to checkmate you with bishop on c4, queen coming in, and an easy mate early on. Okay, this is just one of the ways to sacrifice the knight. The other one, which is also popular, is bishop c4, g4, and short side castle. And then they would try to checkmate at any price, whether it meant sacrificing a knight or a pawn later on with e5, or another bishop with bishop takes f7, just to open up the king a little more, or another pawn to take out pieces even faster, and then try to come for the king. So this would be a typical King's Gambit of the 18th century, 17th century, when people still tried to play for mate right away. Then came along Steinitz, the first world champion, and he said, actually, let's slow down, guys. How about we play for little good things? Little good things like the F file, like pawn structure, having less pawn islands and targets, having a safer king than this guy over here. How about we play for the center, and try to show what we can do over here? How about we play for the space advantage and just keep pushing our pawns all the way? And only with these little good things, like the development advantage, space advantage, center advantage, can we actually start to attack. Ever since then, people, even who played the King's Gambit, had to adjust. People had to figure out new ways to play all these gambits, usually positionally. And that's what I want to show today. Nowadays, if you see somebody playing King's Gambit, it may look something like g5, knight c3, also known as the Quade Gambit. And the whole point of this is that we're not coming for mate. We're not just going to checkmate you in 6 moves. No, we're going to take our time, slowly fight against your pawns, open up some files if you take, make some weaknesses to attack later, or squeeze you. Because if black decides to push for f3, we now have the center space advantage. We now have a safer king who's coming to the queen side. And what's up with this guy on g8? Is he really serious about having this big hole over here that I can invade through? And so most people are too scared for black to accept the pawn because of these positional ideas, not because of checkmate, because you can study ways to stop the checkmate. And most of these sacrifices don't really work, especially if you're a computer. But the positional gambits are a lot harder because even computers, are not sure about how to assess these positions. Is this just better for black because it's an extra pawn? Or does white have equal compensation because of, the center, nice castle, better pawn structure, etc.? If you ask one computer like Stockfish may say, no, 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 I calculated 20 moves, it's just winning for black. And then you give it to someone else like Leela or another computer. And Leela is like, no, wait, I like being down a pawn. This is not so bad at all. And it seems to be that I have enough compensation. Okay? And so that's where the King's Gambit's future lies. Okay? Today I want to show you how the King's Gambit was played by Spassky, the world champion, against Robert James Fischer, the one, the only, the American world champ. Okay? And we start off with those same moves. F4, pawn takes. Bobby is greedy. He always liked taking material if he could get away with it. Knight f3. And so Boris, on the other hand, didn't care much for material. And he was probably one of the first people to play the King's Gambit positionally, not trying to sack all his pieces and throw the slippers at the enemy king, just slowly but surely. And let's see how it served him in this game. We start off with g5, Bobby being greedy, and h4 right away undermining the pawn chain. Now, like I said before, if this was Paul Morphy, we might have seen knight g5, h6, knight takes f7. But this is no longer Paul Morphy. This is Boris Spassky. And he says, no, 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 no. If you give me the pawn back, I'll get my pawn back and just play it with my two extra pawns in the middle, right? With my extra center pawn. And Black said, well, you know, how about I defend the pawn first? You can still take it if you like, but then it's not so bad for me. Then maybe I have some d5 ideas, hitting your knight too. Okay, so for that reason, Spassky said, no, 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 let's slow down and just get our bishop out. I should probably point out that this is not the Bobby Fischer who won the World Championship in 1972. This is an earlier Bobby Fischer. This is a very young Bobby Fischer as a teenager against an experienced Boris Spassky. So the result may surprise you. Okay, this is not the time when Bobby Fischer took a poison pawn on h2. It's not any of those games. This is a lot earlier than that. Okay, after d6, we have knight d3, and even though we're giving up another pawn, we're gonna take f4 back. Okay, so what happens as a result? The bishop will hit the center, and knight c3 will ask the knight a question. If the knight goes back, then you're not hitting the center. But if you take my knight, then ooh, very stable compound in the middle over here. Stable pyramid of pawns, making sure your bishop doesn't see the light of day, doesn't hurt anyone. Okay, you guys can say, but Black is still up a pawn. What's going on? What are you talking about? But how precious is the pawn on f7? Right? It defends your king, maybe, but it's not going to be a queen anytime soon. In the endgame, maybe, but it's not a pass pawn yet. And these pawns may be more solid than mine, but hey, I can argue that both ways. I can say that my center is more solid than yours, at least more ambitious than yours. Okay, so White can say they have a very solid pawn mass over here, a fantastic knight that can't be harmed, that is defending everything. This pawn is weak and will probably fall eventually. And if you try to defend the pawn with h5, then what ends up happening is your h5 pawn is weak, as you'll see very soon. Defending with h5 is not going to help you. Bishop g5, queen has to go away somewhere, and knight f4. And then good luck castling, right? We have bishop c4, castle short, pressure on f7. And if you play f6, oh my goodness, how many more holes do you want to make for yourself? How much do you want to punish your king? You must really hate that black king to play f6. All right. So for that reason, Bobby decided, fine, you can have g4. And Spassky keeps on giving pawns. He gives away the pawn mass. Why? For rapid development. He's gonna be down 3 pawns if black takes. Okay, this is like 3 pawns up, but it doesn't matter because 3 becomes 2. And then these guys are kind of irrelevant. We're not playing for material here. We're playing for the better pieces. My knight is super stable. It's really hard to remove him from here, right? Your bishop is going away. This guy could be a nail pawn one day, right? D6 is a target. F7 is a target. Everything for black is a target. And white has more active pieces coming out faster. For that reason, Bobby did not take. He focused on his pieces. Bishop takes g4. We had to grab something, and at least to open up your king. It's not like I care about the pawn. I'm not counting ice cream here, okay? What I am counting is how safe will your king be when all my pieces will come to the party, okay? And black says, okay, it's fine, it's fine. I'm just gonna castle, and the bishop will replace my roof. And usually he would be right, but not in this case. Takes. We trade off one bishop and say hello. Already, the threats of bishop h6 are in the air. You could try to run away, but then, maybe h6 ideas come to life, or bishop g5. For that reason, he just kicked away the queen. He wants nothing to do with the queen, and it also helps black defend because now they got rook c7 and they bring a friend because the king desperately needs one. Okay? Now, after f5, queen g3, you can say again, black is up material, heavy material, 2 extra pawns. But does it really matter? Do we want to take 1 pawn back just to feel a bit better about ourselves? No. Okay, after bishop takes, rook probably here? And then rook g6. I would be scared to play this for white. The bishop lost the initiative. Now we're no longer attacking. We are the defenders and trying to cover g2 and our own king. Because our dark squares are weak, our king is not so amazing either. Okay? For that reason, he did not take, he kept on attacking. Everyone to the party. Here comes the rook to the 6th rank to invade and to attack, at least to help with the attack. King h8. He was getting scared because in a few moves we already have bishop h6, and even after rook f7, we can go for rook here, rook takes pawn, or look into h5, h6 as well. So for that reason, he just got out of the way. He was scared, which makes sense, and we got out of the way too. You could say why. This king was never in any danger, but yeah, at the same time, there were annoying checks. We don't want any annoying checks to come when we least expect them, right? At some moment, there could be a point where that check saves their life, okay? So we just get the king out of the way. That's a very human move. Computers, sometimes they play it when it's good in some variation, but usually if the computer doesn't see like a solid reason to hide the king, it just says, no, keep on going. Don't worry about it. Because it'll never miss any forks or any tactic. Whereas humans will miss stuff, right? We'll forget that our king is on g1, and then there'll be some fork where you're like, oh no, I forgot the king is open. So for that reason, humans often play moves like king h1. The rook is scaring the queen, and that's okay. We can now collect the pawn. Because as it turns out, your bishop doesn't have many good squares, many good discoveries. Okay, it looks a little scary, like, oh, I'm coming, but how scary is it actually? Okay, queen f4. I always have this looming in the air, scaring you, because at one point or other, I may just sack my queen and go bishop e5. At the right point, of course. Maybe with a rook on f3, and then boom, boom, check. Here, rook g3, queen takes h4, king g1, and now this guy's in big trouble with the deadly dark squares. For that reason, Bobby doesn't play bishop d4. He tries to trade off this bishop. Okay, he was probably hoping for queen f4 and then winning a piece. That would be great for him. After bishop e5, he gets no such free piece. Instead, we get knight takes e5. Okay, bishop e5, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, and we have to block the check. If he was blocking with the bishop, then he'd lose his extra pawn. Now he's not up a pawn at all. Okay. Already at this point, any black advantage is disappearing. I don't think black is much better here at all after takes. Okay, because the rook is awkward, the king is bad. Like, yes, our pawn is not exactly perfect. I wish it was back on h2, but our pieces are more active. So because our pieces are pressing forward and yours are all over the place, like bishop here, rook there, rook here, they're not coordinated. They're not doing a good job. If they're not coordinated, they can't hurt me. Okay, but I can definitely hurt black with my pieces coming in. Okay, so rook takes f5. Of course, we give away h4. He doesn't mind giving up this pawn. And it looks a little bit scary with the g file, but that's just an illusion. Two pieces cannot hurt me. Rook f2. We go back, and it turns out they don't have any tricks anymore. They don't have any tactics. My king is super safe, and this knight is rock solid on d3. Try to remove him. Try. You can't. Right? Only a rook is what it will take to take away the outpost. Otherwise, your extra pawn doesn't really count for much, right? Your extra pawn is on the b file. Or is it going to be a queen? One day? Many years from now? Maybe. But for now, it may as well not be there. What matters now is the king safety because all the major pieces are on the board and both kings are weak. Whose king is weaker? Let's find out. This is already a step in the wrong direction because the bishop was actually helping the rook. He was actually holding something. But after bishop e7, it starts to get a little flimsy, but not yet fatal. This is not going to kill black yet. Okay, rook e4, very strong move. Just pinching black a little bit, just undermining their coordination. Yeah, all the pieces are sort of connected for black, but for how long? Right? Queen g5, hoping to trade. Of course, if we trade, bishop takes, and this is probably a draw. All right, this endgame I expect to be a draw. If, for example, um, let's say black manages to get some activity, they manage to get their pieces out. They have the extra pawn. The bishop is pretty strong. Maybe even black can play for the win here because the bishop may be stronger than the knight if pawns are on both sides. Okay, and you know that rooks and bishops will work very well together. Okay, so black would be the only one playing for the win here, and Bobby's like, come on, trade the queens, but nope, we keep on holding the pressure on the black king. This rook must really feel uncomfortable at the moment. So black says, can I just trade something? Please let me trade something. I'm feeling bad. And of course, he's awkward, but not as awkward as he will be after the next move. So I'll give you guys 3 seconds to try and find it. White to play and win and use the awkwardness in black's camp. There's the awkward rook on g7. Awkward bishop over here getting hit. Awkward king that needs no reminder, right? The pawn is here, and probably what Bobby was hoping for, and I don't know, is some trick like queen takes, rook takes f2, knight takes checkmate. Okay, great. That'll never happen, right? Maybe what he was also hoping for is something like rook e2, where after bishop f6, everything's fine for black. Black managed to consolidate, defend everything, maybe queen takes, and now black is totally fine, very solid. His pieces are doing quite well over here, okay? But that wasn't meant to be. So 3 seconds, feel free to pause the video and see if you can find why this is losing for Fischer. 3, 2, 1. Congrats to anyone who found rook e5, which is just winning on the spot. It's a winning tactic. Boris's pieces are a little more coordinated, and these guys are awkward, and the king is more awkward than my king because the pieces are pinned to him, and the queen has no good squares. It turns out that the spin is really going to cost him. After queen h6, I collect the bishop for free. The queen has no squares. Can't go here, can't go there, can't go anywhere. Queen g6, I gobble your bishop right up. Okay? You can't pin me or anything like that because after bishop f6, I think we can go for something like queen d6 comes to mind. And also you're pinned anyways, right? So I'm attacking your rook and I have rook takes f8 when needed. So I'm just looking at one line here. Bishop takes, check. Here, okay, I can start with taking, take your rook, and finish up a knight. Thanks a lot for the game. Okay. He didn't go for bishop f6, although that was one try. Instead, he tried to run away with rook d8. This is a desperate move. He's really praying for queen takes, bishop takes, rook takes, bishop takes with a fine endgame for black. Of course, we are not interested. Just sidestep. Sidestep the danger. The queen is still bad, and the bishop is even worse than before. We don't need to pin anymore. We're just going for a free piece. Your queen has no good squares, not even a check because of my awesome, magnificent knight. Okay, and that's how Bobby resigned and Boris Spassky won in this King's Gambit. Spassky actually had a great record in the King's Gambit, so I recommend that you guys try it for yourself. See if you can play it positionally. You don't have to checkmate black right away, but you can just play for the little things. Like for example, in this game, he played for the bad bishop that was hitting rock, the bad king, right? And the awkwardness in the pieces. Even later on, when the king seemed safe enough, it turned out that there were always some tactics and tricks that made Black's life hard. Okay, thanks for watching and see you next time.